I'm going to at least record this so I won't say anything bad about I2. This recording has been authorized to not contain no cruelty to animals and no bad things against anything. So. All right, so what you're looking at is the engineering management class on the bhacker.com website. I haven't put this in the EMS yet, but I probably should. But what I'm going to do is record what I'm talking about right now is going to be recorded and put above this. So if you miss anything of these valuable words that you're going to receive right now, you can go back and listen to the video. This one here is called Final Exam Review. It's a PDF document. If you click on it, or excuse me, it's a Microsoft Word document. If you click on it and open it up, it looks like this. And it says EM Final Exam Review. So as promised, what I've done is I've gone through all of the lectures that we went through, and I've picked out and I've told you which lecture to look at. Because we don't have a book for this course, this is your required reading. So long story short, I heavily focused on the technology management part. So if you go into the website and you go down to the, my ears got stuffed up for some reason. There we go. That was really weird. I'm like hearing myself talk. Alright, so technology management lectures. 90% of the exam comes out of this section. Because if you've noticed, or maybe you haven't noticed, I don't know, I've been covering mostly this lecture set. I like this lecture set a little bit better. It's a little bit less business-like, more technology-oriented, which is why I put it under the technology category. But long story short, some of the other ones you might find interesting out of the Managing Innovations lectures. And if you remember the beginning of the course, I did cover the first few, about four or five of the Management of Innovation. There's not as many, there's only 11 of them in this category. And I'm going to tell you which ones, in a few minutes I'm going to tell you which ones to look at, what concepts to focus on, and then I also want to discuss the format of the exam. So some of you are not going to be happy with me because I decided, well, first of all, I tried to pick a case study and I figured out I couldn't find a case study that I liked that was really engineering management. And then I said, well, okay, what about those short essay kind of things? And I went, oh, well, that's not going to work either because if a student doesn't know about any of those topics, it's really going to be hard for them to write on them. So what I did is a plan B, or C or D, different plan, different format than I've discussed prior. But this one I think is going to be a win-win for all. So what you got is I'm going to give you 25 questions on the exam. But you only have to answer, or no, excuse me, the exams are 25 points. There's going to be 15 questions on the exam, but you only have to answer 5 of them. Each 5 is worth 5 points. So 5 times 5 is 25. But you have 15 total. So if you think you got 5 of them good, and you want to do a bonus question, you can do one extra bonus question if you want to cover your bases. And I picked the best 5. So if I see that you've answered 5 of them and all 5 of them were good, then I grade all 5 of them. If I see that you've answered 6 of them, I'll pick the 5 best ones, which means I'm not going to grade one that's only worth 4 points instead of one that's worth 5 points. So I'll pick the best 5 out of 6 that I see there. So if you're not sure about one of your answers, you're kind of iffy on both of them. So this is the way I would do it. If you were like iffy, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure if this is really right, and you have a little extra time left, maybe, then you can answer number 6. Just take a bonus question on there and say, well, let me try this one. And then, because I'm really 50-50 on both of them, and then one of them might be better than the other in the end, and I'm going to grade the better one. So what are you answering? You're answering these types of questions, but these are shorter versions of the questions. So what I've done with the questions is I've tried to pick, well, we have about 15 different subject areas. We went through about 15 different lectures on 15 different topics. So now you'll actually see, well, what was this class about? Well, here, I'm going to give you a whole list of this. We're going to review the entire course right now. So they're 1 to 2 paragraphs in length answers with a 50-word minimum. So 50 words, if you take and you look at these questions, actually the first 3 questions are 50 words. So it's not that much writing. What I'm looking for is more than a 1 word or more than 2 words. I want a couple of sentences. You only have to answer 5 questions. But you don't have to give me an entire essay. on all of them. Just 1 or 2 paragraphs that, they answer the question. I'll give you some sample answers along with some sample questions so we can kind of see how that works. But the minimum has to be 50 words per answer, which is easy to do. But there's no maximum. You can write as much as you want. I just want you to be able to answer it. In order to answer the question thoroughly, you're going to have to use at least 50 words in most cases. A majority of the questions are going to ask you to provide information about how a concept could be used, what a concept is, how the concept could be used, how the concept could be used in a real company or in a business environment or in an engineering scenario. So here's the thing. So you'll be talking about a topic in one of the questions. You'll describe what it is, how it's useful. You'll answer the questions of the question. There's multiple questions per each question. I'll give you an example in a few minutes. Then you'll apply it towards something, or you'll think about it in a particular business or an engineering scenario. So if you want to prepare for the exam to have a successful area, pick 5 or 6 subject areas that I'm going to go through in a few minutes. So go through here and you can pre-select the subject areas you're interested in. So select 5 or 6 of them. Just that extra 6 is just the bonus, just in case. Prepare to have an understanding of what these topics are about. If you were to describe something in regards to the topic, and then also describe, as an example, a business scenario. If you try to relate it to a real world business scenario of some sort, and I'll give you some examples, then you'll have something to pick at, something to remember, and then you'll have a little bit more to write on. Instead of having to decide while you're taking the exam, having to decide on a business scenario, which is a little bit harder to do, especially when you're under the pressure of an exam. So you're writing the exam out, and you won't have to bring anything with you. You'll write on the exam sheet. You'll fill it out, and then you'll have to come from memory in terms of relating the information. My ears are just killing me right now. I don't know why. So it might be helpful if you pre-prepare examples and scenarios and think about it. And I'll give you a complete answer, about a 50-word answer to one of these questions coming up soon here. Questions on the format so far. Because if you don't know the format, then it's really hard to kind of figure out how you're going to study for this format.
What's the duration of the exam?
I would say that's going to take you probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending upon how fast you write and think. You don't want to rush it. It's not like one of those speed horse, racehorse exams where you just try to answer 100 questions. You only have 5 questions, but it's really a thinking exercise. So it depends on how fast you think, how much you've prepared for it. I can imagine someone who's already prepared, who knows what they're going to talk about, who's got everything already preset, will probably finish in 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe half hour. If you got everything memorized and you're like fast writer, fast thinker. But a lot up to 2, you'll have up to 2 hours. I think the average person is going to take an hour, at least an hour. I say, without I've never given this exam before. It's a brand new exam, so I'm thinking about an hour and a half to 2 hours is probably a good time, which is the length of this course. Or this class. So we run on Mondays, as you know, and we start at 2 o'clock. You'll have till 4:45 or 5, or as long as you want, or as long as you need. So time's not really a problem. If you don't like the Monday afternoon scenario, I will be giving exams between 11 and 1 on Wednesday. So if you don't want to take this exam on Monday, you could take it on Wednesday. If you take it on Wednesday, it's at 11 a.m. in the morning. 11, 12, 1, well, we'll go till 2. We'll go until everybody's done. So if you start the exam at 11 and you take 3 hours, we'll end at 3 hours. You'll end at 3 hours. So I'm not going to pressure you on the time. It's not a timed exam. You can take as long as you want. But I'm thinking most people are probably going to be done by 1. If you come on Wednesday, don't show up at 1, or don't show up at 12, show up at 11. Because if you don't start at 11, you're not going to be done by the time the exam time frame is going to be done. Because I'm not going to sit here all day and give exams out. So I'm going to start them at 11 until everybody's done. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So let's talk about the content of the exam. now that we got the format down, hopefully. So what subject areas are you going to be tested on? Well, the no-brainer is really, and these are not really question numbers. I don't know why the indentation changed on me here. They're supposed to all be at the same bullet level. But the first one really gets out of the first couple of lectures out of each section. And it gets into knowing the meaning of engineering management, what engineering management is, what is the meaning of information systems and information systems innovation and technology, technology management, information resources, and those it's like a definitional question. So this might actually be an easy one to prepare for. So I didn't actually pinpoint where, in some of the other ones I've got lecture 2, lecture 3, lecture 4, lecture 5. This one I didn't actually put the lecture numbers on it because it's really the beginning part, and a lot of the innovation lectures actually get into this too. So it's mixed in throughout a bunch of other lectures, but it's also in the first one of each one of the series tracks. So let me give you a sample answer to this. So I could say that this is not the question. None of these are questions. They're just topic areas. So the question might be worded, and let me just make up a question because I purposely didn't bring the exam with me so I would not be able to read questions that are on there because I've made that mistake in the past. I'm not doing that. So if I said, tell me, if the question list, I'm going to make a question up now. I'm going to say, tell me the differences between information systems, information technology, information resources, and engineering management. How are they related and how are they different? Okay, we're going to answer this question. Well, I'd first define all 3 or 4 or whatever I said. So I say, information systems is really keeping track of the data and managing and organizing the company's data to turn it into valuable information that they can use to accomplish something in the organization. It's really information management for the most part, where information technology is really related at the technology that's being used to manage the information. And then technology management is not really having to deal with the information, it's more towards the technology that's being used as the core competencies or the technology that's being used in the organization to make it functional or make it effective. And then engineering management, well, it could involve some of those other topics, but it doesn't really have to. It could be, it's a very broad field that overlaps into other fields. And in engineering management, you're managing projects and you're managing activities and you have constant change and you have a highly technical environment, but it's really management towards a higher tech or a technology-oriented management, but more towards a specialized industry. So it's really, it's too much of a generic, you can actually say it's too much of a, it is, I mean, giving you an answer here, it's too much of a generic term, really, to say I'm an engineering manager. It's like saying I'm an engineer. Like, well, what is an engineer? Well, it's an engineering manager. Kind of the same thing. We don't really have a definition for it, but it does overlap. There is a field for it. It does have its place, but it's very high niched focus towards the industry that you're working in. An engineering manager for a software industry is going to be having a different job than one for hardware or one for another kind of industry, manufacturing. We have some engineering managers that work in manufacturing organizations, some of them that work in software development, some of them work with QA, some of them work with, new product development, R&D. So it's a very broad field that overlaps into most of the other disciplines, and some engineering managers have a strong engineering background, some of them have a strong business background, and they bring together both of the skill sets, actually. So engineering managers really actually do have to have both sides of the skill set. You can't just be a business person. You have to and you have to be open to technology and to engineering disciplines. But then you're a business person, but you also have to think like an engineer. Engineers are all about life cycles and about theories and about structured logical approaches to problem solving and all of the different things that come with engineering as a science, which is actually the argument why people, slight tangent to the answering of this question, but that's actually been a long-term argument about software engineering. People say, oh, it's not really an engineering. It's software development. It's not really an engineering. But if you think about engineering, we got electrical engineering, we got mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, and software engineering. People say computer. Well, computer engineering, I think, is more engineering than software is. But people for the longest time have been saying that engineering is, software is not engineering. But, and actually, I can see both sides of the fence for that. And if I were answering a question on a software engineering exam, I'd elaborate a little bit more on that. But in terms of engineering, hopefully you're starting to get the picture that, I have to, what kind of engineering you're talking about. It's going to give you the industry, and then what kind of management, what position in management, what area, and then you're talking about, how generic that particular kind of thing could be. So if you could, and for lack of better words, BS like I just did for 2 paragraphs, you get an A on the answer to that question. So it doesn't really matter what you write as long as it's on topic. Some of you might focus towards more of the technology, more of the business, more of the, I don't know, you might have your own personal take on the question. You don't like a part of a question, answer part of it well, don't answer the other part of it. Because you're going to have questions that have multiple questions inside of it. So if I don't know, I didn't even mention anything about information resources when I just answered that question. But I gave enough information about engineering management, and I gave enough information to know that I had a clue. I'm looking for a well thought out answer, which is why I say don't rush this exam. You don't want to come in and go, okay, I'm done. Because then I'm going to read your answers going, what? You gave me a bullet list. Write complete sentences, put complete thought patterns out there. When in doubt, give me a little bit more, just in case I don't understand what you're talking about. But don't sit there and repeat yourself because you have to make some word count. 50 words is pretty short, actually. I will have it so it's printed on. They didn't do this right on my weekend class. I gave a very similar, and then they printed it on both sides of the sheet. I will have it so the exam is only printed on one side, so you'll have room on the opposite side to continue your answers. Or I might have it so that you have one page that's just the exam, and then you have extra pages that will be given to you that you can write your exam answers on. Hopefully pages that are lined, so you can easily write your exam. And this will be a new experience for some who don't write. So I know I learned that actually. Well, when I started law school, I went. I was always on the computer all the time. Computer science degrees and studying computer science, it's all in software engineering. It's all on the computer. And then like my first year of law school, they give me this paper and a pen, and I'm like, my exam is on paper, my pen. I have to take notes, and then I had to learn how to write again, and then I have no spell checker. I have no calculator, nothing on my computer that can help me with this here. So anyway, long story short, you're not being graded on grammar, spelling, punctuation, what do they call that? Cursive, handwriting technique. If I can read it, I can grade it. If I can't read it, I'm going to have problems grading it. Write it in English. And then write it. You can use cursive or manuscript or all caps. I have a tendency to write myself in all caps for some strange reason. I don't know why. Because I don't practice handwriting. So much better now than I was before, but still, it's a challenge. Long story short, you're not graded. It's not an English class. So think about getting your thoughts out. So, all right, so that was question number 1. Questions on what is engineering management. Of course, I'm going to have a question like that on a final exam because I'm going to have something that gets at, this is an engineering management class, 101. So, all right, and I didn't give you any lectures, lecture numbers, but I gave you a couple lectures right in the beginning. So look at lecture number 1 and number 2 of each set if you want. So the next subject area is on Porter's competitive forces model. It's in lecture 2, and then it's also in lecture 3. It's in both lectures. It was presented in lecture 2, and then most people go, which lecture 2 are you talking about? All of the ones that I'm talking about and I'm mentioning lecture numbers for are in this set, the first set, technology management. You can almost skip the innovation ones unless you want more information. There's overlap between the two. Difference being this is for business people, this is for engineering people. Well, it was supposed to be. That was the original intention. So, and I went towards the engineering side. Apparently I'm not very much of a business person. I don't know. Maybe I'm just leaning. If you want it with a business perspective, it's the same topic areas. Then look in the innovation section. Okay. So we have Porter's competitive forces model. And a lot of people will say, well, you know what, I read about Porter's model. And I had all this stuff in my Management 101 course. Does it have to come out of this class? Nope. Doesn't have to come out. So if there's something about the model, I covered the model, but I didn't cover everything about the model. There might be more information about the model that you might personally be experienced with, or you might have some knowledge of it, or you might go on the internet, you might look it up, or you might read about Porter's model. If you know I'm going to ask a question about Porter's model, you might actually think about, well, I'm going to prepare for this exam, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to find some literature on this, and I'm going to read about the model. It may not necessarily be in my lecture. You might find a few things, there's a lot more to the model than I gave you, that's not in there. It's okay, you can use it. It's the model. So some people are going to focus on the model. Some people say, hey, you know what, I hate that model. I don't like that model. I'm going to go to another question. All of these are the subject areas. I'm giving you more than 15 of them, but they're all incorporated into 15 subject areas. So if you don't like the model, don't go with the model. I actually like the next one better. And as we go through, you can ask me questions as well. But this top line, bottom line thinking, actually, I use that a lot, actually. Is it, and if you look at the model, you look at lecture number 3 as an example. It defines what the top line and the bottom line means. Am I reducing an expense? Am I making my overhead easier? Am I giving myself a competitive advantage for the bottom line? And the bottom line is your operating, and your top line is your revenue stream. So if you think about profit and loss, think about the balance between good and evil. You think about the balance between, it doesn't really matter how much money I'm making if I'm spending it all on the development. I'm still not going to make money in the end. If my product is costing me so much and I'm charging so much for it, it's the balance between the cost and the revenue. It's like strict accounting if you think about it. So you can talk about, and the question is getting at what's meant by top line and bottom line. And then this particular question might have, and this would be a typical one that would have something on it that says provide, and I put it up here actually, I put the wording. A majority of the questions will ask you to provide an example of how a concept can be used in real life, in a real life company, or business or engineering scenario. So you could talk about a project and say, well, if we look at the top line versus the bottom line, the top line would be this, this, and this, and this, and this related to our project. And then the bottom line, or I don't know why I said bottom line, top line, the other one would be this, this, and this, and this. Then the company could kind of weigh the two of them and kind of figure out, how to make things more profitable or how to make things more competitive, or actually we have to look at the model. This actually plays in with the model, Porter's model, so it's an extension of his model. But it's a concept that kind of goes along with, looking at, ways to be more efficient, ways to save money, ways to make more money. I don't know, in terms of watching expenses and watching development, further enhancing, maybe even so the company offerings or something. So, and then reducing expenses, hopefully. Because, it's basic business because nobody wants to spend too much money. I mean, you want to, the classic scenario, don't spend a lot of money and make a lot of money, right? But how do you do that in real life? So you got to look at, you got to organize the company. So you could talk about, and if you're answering this particular question, you could talk about a scenario of a particular company. And then some people are going to come back and say, I don't know anything about any companies. I've never worked before. I'm brand new to the United States. This is my first term here. I don't know. Talk about an Indian company. Talk about a company in another country. Or I don't have to know about the company. Talk about a hypothetical company. Or better yet, make up a company. Acme Inc. Acme Inc. is going to do this and this and this and this. And it's a made up, I should say, in a hypothetical company. Hypothetical is the one that doesn't exist. In theory, as an example, some companies, or many companies, or, don't be specific. And you can be completely wrong about the company. I don't care. I'm not testing your knowledge of companies. So if you say, oh, HP does it this way and IBM does it that way, and I read, they go, no, they don't. That's okay. It's in your little world. That's fine. If you think that, I feel sorry for you, but, right answer. If you related it correctly, yeah. So You're in control of your own scenarios. Long story short. Okay, any questions on, well, just pop up, raise your hand, ask me questions as we go through this. Otherwise, I'm going to move right along. So if you don't like Porter's 5 forces model, you don't like this top-down, bottom line, and I basically focused the questions on the lectures that I spent more time on. So that was the beginning of the course. Then we got into, remember supply chain management? I know I talked about ERP and supply chain management. So you could think, all right, I know supply chain management, and actually customer relationship management is also on this exam, and so is databases. So I go, oh, I know she said this, she talked about the supply chain management. You can go to lecture number 4 and refresh your memory on the concept of supply chain management. And then be prepared to answer a question on supply chain management. So the concept of supply chain management, how the technology is used to improve it, used to improve the concept. So you could, if you wanted to prepare for this exam, there's no book, so there's no reading for you to do. Instead, you've got to do your own self-research. So go, supply chain management. Okay. Go out to the internet, find articles on supply chain management. Don't look for commercial stuff. That's not going to help you. But, you know, look for, okay, I need a clear understanding of it. So get yourself a clear understanding of it. And then think, well, how can this help a business? Because the questions are going to ask you how it can be used to help a business. How can it help the business? Okay, helps it here, helps it here, helps it there. Oh yeah, look at that company used it for this. Oh, they put it all online and they incorporated it into an ERP system. Oh, that was really ingenious, you know. And then when you come in fact, a lot of people could do is just write up sample answers. If you wanted to practice this ahead of time, say, hey, I'm gonna pick supply chain management, and then write up an answer. And then review your answer, you know, an hour or two before the exam or so. And say, hey, this exam is all about preparation if you haven't gotten the point yet. So, all right, because if you just go in, you're like, it's not rote memory, it's not regurgitation, it's about preparation. So supply chain management, also in bullet point number 4, I probably should have labeled them. Customer relationship management, same concept, CRM. I'm not going to hit you up with, what's CRM, what's SEM? So think past just the definition of what it is, but how it can be used, what features it has. You know, so we know supply chain management actually moves over and crosses over into manufacturing, actually, and production line scheduling. It's more than just procuring parts and pieces, actually. It's the entire cooperation, entire agreements with suppliers, and then it's the coordination with manufacturing efforts to get parts and pieces to show up on time, stuff like that. I think customer relationship management is more than telephone solicitation, and it's more than surveys, and it's more than, you know, kind of the things as a consumer we get stuck with. So that was lecture 4 that went over that. Remember knowledge-based systems, fuzzy logic. Actually, I think that was the same lecture I did the small children working in factories, but I'm not sure if that was that lecture or not. Don't remember that stuff. There's no questions on children working in factories. Knowledge management, though, there's a question on that. Expert systems and knowledge management systems. Getting knowledge, using knowledge, and knowledge discovery. Also talked about the concept of databases. So knowledge management is really lecture 4. Databases and database technology, data mining, data warehouses, really lecture 6. And you might think to yourself, okay, she just said, you know, how can database technology, now I'm on this bullet point right here, databases, data warehouse, data mining, can be used to help a business. Well, I don't know anything about data mining. Then don't worry about it. You don't like data mining? Don't look up, don't study data mining. Talk about databases. Right, the concept is data, or data warehouses. I don't like data warehouses. Then talk about databases. You can talk about how database technology, well, if a crossover, if you're in my Oracle class, you know about database technology. So you can talk about all the ways a database can help a company in terms of database technology. Going back up here a little bit, also ERP was also discussed, Enterprise Resource Planning. So how can the technology be used to help support its functionality, which is lecture 5 and 6. So lecture 5 and 6 are about ERP. You might find, in fact, this is a good example, ERP is mentioned throughout the entire later part of the lecture series. It pops up everywhere. But the core of the material that's going to help you the most is in 5 and 6, which is how these chapters were identified. It's like the first citing of it is the chapter I listed. So then this next bullet point, decision support expert systems, artificial intelligence. Remember MAPS? Global information, geographical information systems. That was actually just recently. Geographical information systems, artificial intelligence, expert systems, decision support systems. That's the, again, it overlaps with knowledge management, which was lecture 7, but you might find a little bit in lecture 4 to help you as well. Lecture 7 was mostly focused on the artificial intelligence, and GIS, graphical information systems. I think we talked about location-based services as well, stuff like that. Let's see, lecture number 8 was on basic e-commerce concepts. You don't like artificial intelligence decision support, don't study that. Focus on e-commerce. In fact, most people as consumers are familiar with e-commerce already, but you might not be familiar with it as a business concept or as a model. Questions on e-commerce technology, security, nature of the business. E-commerce is m-commerce as well. E-business, overlapping technologies. You could do a little pre-study on e-commerce if you wanted to. And then moving right along to the next subject we had after that, we looked at software development lifecycle models. Remember the waterfall model, rapid application development, and prototyping. Talked about and discussed a lot. That was lecture 9. That's the PowerPoint 9. So if you're a software engineering background, this is a no-brainer question for you actually, because then you can just talk about software development processes, models, and stuff. If you have no idea, never heard of software engineering, not familiar with the models, then I wouldn't pick this question. Unless you really want to study it, and then study that question, and then be prepared to answer a question about software development lifecycle models. The no-brainer kind of question I'm going to ask you about this is probably to compare a couple models. Take a look at this, what makes this one better than that one. Or describe modeling in general. Describe what you're trying to accomplish. What are the phases of a software development lifecycle model? Stuff like that. Then we looked at service-oriented architectures in lecture 10, which we just covered actually very recently. And we looked at, in fact, we're going to look at service-oriented architectures and then software as a service or cloud technology today. We're covering lecture 17 today. So we haven't actually gotten that yet. But we looked at this architecture. We also, or the concepts related to that, review lecture 10 if you're interested in that. Otherwise, you can move on to intellectual property, privacy, security, information protection, which was lecture 11. Remember I covered 11 earlier in the course because I needed to cover that for one of the assignments that we were doing.
Yes.
Yeah, we did cover 11. So there's another one also that works with 11. That was one of the options I could have covered today. So we have 17 that I'm going to cover today. It's the second part of today. We have 11 and then we have 12. 11 is on intellectual property, but I covered the other one. I covered 10. 10 is also on intellectual property. 11 is more on protecting people and information. It's kind of a continuation, but it gets into ethics and it gets into situations and circumstances, but it also goes over intellectual property. So I didn't cover this one, but this one is very similar to the other one that I covered, which is why I kind of decided probably focus on cloud computing instead and software as a service, which gives you a better model. But this one is employees, privacy of employees, reasons for monitoring employees, privacy of consumers, old cookie and spam and ad-aware concepts and web logs and stuff like that. So you might find it interesting if you're preparing for the final and you get to this one here. Also think that 10 and 11 actually work with that one for intellectual property, or was it 11 and 12? Oh, that was 11. 11, I think it was 10 and 11. 10 was software as a service. Well, it's in there somewhere. I think it's in the MI. I think it was actually in the innovations section, not the technology section. Yeah, I think it was actually lecture 11, but it was from the innovation section. Or review this one. It's a different lecture than the one I gave you, but it's on the same topics, same cover, same. The information doesn't change. The presentation and the lecture does. So number 12 is on the trends and the changing. I kind of gave you some of it. I'm going to give you more of it today. So I'm really going to cover some of this today, the software as a service. But voice over IP, other internet-related technologies, which comes out of lecture 12, which is this lecture here. That this is the other one I didn't cover, but I'm going to cover some of it today. Emerging trends and technologies. So this one is, I would say, slightly outdated. It's just there's newer stuff that hasn't been added to this yet, like Web 3.0. It stops at Web 2.0. So, but then I don't know, application service provider. I'm going to talk about some of this stuff later, and some of this stuff is kind of no-brainer, especially if you work in the business world these days. It's just common stuff. But if you don't know anything about technologies and current trends and emerging, then don't answer that question on the final. If you don't like it, don't answer it. Focus on the earlier questions. But maybe if you have an interest in that, the earlier questions are boring, you want to prepare for more, then go ahead and take a look at lecture 12. But it's kind of an optional kind of thing. I'm not really going to cover it. And then covering cloud computing momentarily. So that's what's coming up. And what's coming up now is lecture 17, which is kind of putting together some of the emerging trends and changes along with cloud computing as a concept, because it's probably one of the most misunderstood concepts out there by, well, actually by both engineers and business people. They lump things into one category, and they call everything the cloud, when really it's a subcomponent of it. So I'll be talking about the layering of the cloud and stuff like that in a few minutes. But and then the last bullet point down here says skip. No 13, 14, 15, or 16. And they're all networking related. So I did not cover networking. Probably because I've chosen to cover cloud computing instead. Because networking, almost too technical for this course. TCP/IP, IP, internetworking, which is what 14 is about, or networking concepts, which is about lecture 13. Access control and security, lecture 15, not such a good topic for business people. Engineers really love it, but not relevant. Take a client server in the internet, or take computing, networking, computer networks, if you're interested in networking. I figured it was kind of a little bit beyond the scope of this course. I included the lectures just in case there was an interest, but we're not covering that. And then number 16 is a little bit outdated. It talks about careers and information systems. It's more of a career planning and assessment kind of thing. Like, well, do I like this? Do I not like that? Kind of thing. So you can optionally look at lecture 16 if you want, if you're interested in changing your career or you're thinking about it. But it's very limited. It's very focused on information systems, technology, engineering management. So it just kind of gives you a snapshot view, and the snapshot view is a couple of years old at this point, so I didn't figure it was worth anything. So that's the area of the 15 questions you're going to get. Those are subject areas. As I mentioned before, these aren't really the questions, but you'll see longer questions, but they're on the same topics. These are all the topic areas. So pick 5 or 6 if you want the little buffer there. Prepare an answer for 5 or 6 of them. So you already know the content of the exam. You just come in and you write your answers. Of course, you have to read the questions. You have to gear your answer towards the question. But if you know something about, as an example, customer relationship management, you might be able to, compare, or contrast the use of customer relationship management for a company versus not using it. What value can it add, or something, or if you don't know anything about customer relationship management, it's really hard to answer the question, well, what value does it add, or what value does it take away? Actually, for the most part, all of these things have pros and cons to them. ERP systems have been blamed for catastrophic business failures and closures. Customer relationship management is claimed, well, most people just shut most of the, how many people like telephone solicitors calling them at dinner time? Nobody likes that. So most people shut that stuff down. Plus also the joke of the, telephone answering machine. Press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for that, 4 for that. Okay, now press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for that. That's all products of customer relationship management, trying to provide 24-hour day automated support. They automated part of it. It just didn't work right for the most part. But questions about the final exam? Those people who came in late, you probably have a lot of questions. So, but long story short, that's what's on the final exam. So usually when someone walks in late, I go, and that's what's on the final exam. So this sheet that, just in case you did come in late, this piece of paper that I've been looking at here, this form I've been looking at, is posted on the bhaker.com website. It's called Final Exam Review. So I'm also going to stop this recording and then post this recording as a separate link that will show up above this one. For those people who came in late, you want to know, what did she say in the beginning? I came in at the tail end and I missed everything in the beginning. Then listen to this again and you can see it. So I'm going to stop this recording.